It's never about resources. It's always about resourcefulness. If you're resourceful enough, you will figure out a way, you will make it happen. Whenever we don't get the result that we want, or I should say a lot of times we want to blame it on the resources. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough whatever. If you're honest with yourself, it's never about that. Like if you are resourceful enough, you will find the time, or you will find the money, or you will find a way for somebody to get you the money or whatever, right?
Welcome to the Nicholas Natali Show, where we chat with entrepreneurs, experts, and entertainers to help you live a more fulfilling life and take your business to the next level. Been a while since we've heard that one. Today, we're chatting with Ryan Horn, and believe it or not, this was our third time recording this episode. The first, we had technical difficulties. The second, technical difficulties. And now, in all its glory, the long-awaited release. Ryan Horn is the founder of the Extraordinary Man movement. He went from being broke and working 12-hour night shifts at a metal factory while sleeping on his aunt's couch to owing over $270,000 to the IRS, to then becoming an award-winning entrepreneur. He has a proprietary framework, 5 steps to become an extraordinary man, that's helping thousands of men around the world transform their lives and their business. Riddle of the week: what does garlic do when it gets hot? Stay tuned to the end of the episode to find out. That was the intro. Now let's jump into the episode. Hello and welcome. This is the Nicholas Natali Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Natali. Today we have a very special guest, Ryan Horn. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nicholas. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Here's where I want to start. I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to leave it up to you to provide context around what we're talking about here. The question is, what was your mental state like when you found yourself sneaking in and out of a 60-plus-year-old community, sleeping on your aunt's couch, pursuing personal training, but not have any sales skills yet? What was it like?
Man, you're jumping right in the middle of my story. So that was definitely an interesting time in my life. Just a quick backstory on that. So let's see, I was 22 years old at the time, I believe. I just graduated college not too long before that. Initially wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. Out of college, work with college athletes. So got a degree in exercise science. And not too long before I graduated, read this great book called The Education of Millionaires, which talked about how self-education is the most important type of education. It talked about starting your own business. And I was entrepreneurial growing up. Like when I was like 11 or 12, I went and sold calendars door to door in my tiny hometown of like 300 people where everybody knew each other. I had an entrepreneurial background and I loved that. So I decided, hey, why don't I just start my own business instead of trying to get a job at a college and, probably need a master's degree, all these other things, right? I moved down to the Twin Cities in Minnesota, which is where I still live, in 2012 and started a personal training business. And 3 months in, I had made a total of $200 and didn't know what I was doing. Learned very quickly that it does not matter how skilled you are at what you do. That is not what brings in the money. So it's important. I'm not saying you shouldn't be good at what you do. Obviously you should. But if you don't know how to market and you don't know how to sell, you will not make any money. And I did not know how to market, didn't know how to sell. And so I did not make very much money and was drowning in student loan debt at the time. These payments were about to come due. So as you said, I was living with my aunt. I was sleeping on her couch in a 60-plus condo community. So I was technically not even allowed to be there. So I literally am sneaking in and out every morning and evening. And so my mental state at that time, and I should also add that because I wasn't making any money in my business and I had these bills coming due, I needed to make some money. So I went to an employment agency. They placed me in a metal factory. I'm working 12-hour night shifts from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. for $9 an hour. And so my mental state at that time was overall, I would say, for the circumstances, it was still pretty positive because I really believed in myself. I knew that I was made for more than that, but it was tough being in that situation where it's like, man, everybody told me I was going to be successful at whatever I did, and I got good grades in school and thought I was doing everything right. And here I am working at this metal factory, sleeping on my aunt's couch, sneaking in and out, trying to avoid these, old ladies from reporting me that I'm living there. And so it was definitely very interesting. It was definitely very challenging. It was a daily battle, I would say, to fight the voices in my head that said, man, look at you, you're a failure. What are you doing? Versus knowing that, hey, this is just where I'm at right now, but it's not where I'm going. Hopefully that answered your question.
That does answer my question. That's funny that you mentioned people told you you'll be successful at anything and like you got good grades, because I totally relate to that. Like sometimes I think to myself, like maybe if I had a couple haters, some more haters, maybe I'd be like more, had more of a chip on my shoulder. That's funny. I do like that. So you said you were 22. Tell me about why your 23rd birthday ended up being the catalyst for action for you, because I mean, you have a dream, you have a dream that you're chasing and you want it. So what changed on your 23rd birthday?
Yeah. So like I said, working at the metal factory, 12-hour night shifts. And so one day I'm at the metal factory, I'm in the break room. It's like 2:00 in the morning, something like that. And I'm just sitting in there and I happened to look up at the clock and I realized that it was my 23rd birthday.
Oh,
so
man.
I went in before midnight. I'm not 23 yet, and I didn't even realize it. Like, it just hit me like that, like when I looked up at the clock, and that hit me hard, man. That felt like a gut punch, because I was like, man, what the heck am I doing here?
Yeah.
Like, God, I know you have to have a plan that's greater than this for my life. Man, I don't know if you've ever felt like you're living below your potential, or like you're letting everybody around you down, or just like you're made for more, right? But that is exactly how I felt. And it did not feel very good, right? Because I knew that I was made for more and I had a dream inside of me. I felt like I was trapped. I'm sitting there, and if I'm honest, I probably felt sorry for myself for like 10, 15 minutes. But then I was like, you know what? I don't have to just sit here and take it, right? I can do something about it. And so I made a very powerful decision that changed my life. So the decision that I made was that I was going to quit the metal factory and go out and acquire whatever skills that I needed to acquire, mostly marketing and selling, but I knew that there was probably mindset stuff, other things that I needed to work through. Whatever it was, I was going to go figure it out and make my business successful or die trying. So I finished out that shift to the metal factory, quit, never went back. Long story short, it wasn't like, oh, the next day, like I was crushing in my business, right? But it was about 4 months or so later of, man, just really digging in deep into personal development and particularly into marketing and sales. Found a mentor in that area, and I was able to get a little bit of momentum going in my business. So it was nothing like to write home about, right? I wasn't killing it, but I was making enough money to be able to move out of my aunt's place to be able to start paying my bills. But the really frustrating thing about that, Nicholas, is that I pretty much stayed in that place where it was like, okay, I'm barely paying the bills, but there's nothing extra really, for about the next year and a half, despite the fact that I felt like I was working harder and harder. I'm reading more books, I'm buying more courses, and I felt like nothing was really moving the needle, at least not significantly. Maybe up a little bit here, but then back down again the next month. And it was so frustrating because I couldn't figure out what the issue was. And I got this free coaching call with a program that I had invested in like a year prior. And it was a great program, loved it, helped me a lot. But for some reason, I kept just kind of stiff arming this free coaching call. And they reached out to me like literally probably like 20 times to try to get me to do it. And so finally, I'm like, okay, I've been trying my own plan for a long time and it's really frustrating and it hasn't really worked out the way I want it to. So let me just do this coaching call, even though I know I can't afford the coaching and I don't know if I want the coaching. I don't know if I need the coaching, but let me just jump on and see what happens. And so I did that. And it was amazing. I had a huge breakthrough on the coaching call. And basically at the end of the call, I was like, man, I need a coach. That's what's missing. And I did not have the money for coaching at the time. It was definitely not a small investment. It was basically, you got to pay it up front. Long story short, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur over the last 11 years is that it's never about resources. It's always about resourcefulness. If you're resourceful enough, you will figure out a way, you will make it happen. Whenever we don't get the result that we want, or I should say a lot of times we want to blame it on the resources. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough whatever. If you're honest with yourself, it's never about that. Like if you are resourceful enough, you will find the time or you will find the money or you will find a way for somebody to get you the money or whatever, right? I got resourceful, put the entire coaching on a credit card, believing in myself, betting on myself, and that it's going to work out. And one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. So the next 12 months, like my life got radically transformed by having a coach. So not only did my income double in the next 12 months, and that's primarily why I was hiring a coach, right? Because I needed to grow my business, but I had no idea, like every single area of my life got so much better. And so along that process, probably about 6 months into having a coach is when I met my now wife, Brittany. I'm really, really glad that I had a coach through that process because you know the story, Nicholas. It wasn't like Oh man, we met, we were both like, this is amazing and happily ever after, right? So there's a little bit more to the story than that, but I'm super glad that I had a coach to go through that process as well. Honestly, just coaching radically transformed my life. My business was doing well after that, but I got so much value from coaching that I got interested in becoming a coach myself. Over the next couple of years, I kind of dipped my toe in the water of coaching. My coach taught me how to be a coach, started coaching some people for free. And within a few years, I felt like God was calling me out of my personal training business, even though I loved it and it was doing great, and into coaching. And so 2018, I started my current business, which is called Extraordinary Man. I coach high-performing kingdom businessmen and help them maximize their potential so they can grow their business, lead their family, and build the kingdom. And so that is what I do now. It all started with that first coaching call and then the courage to jump and to say, yes, I know I need this, and get resourceful and hire that first coach.
It's such a powerful story. And there's so much I want to unpack there. Hey, what's going on? It's Nick. Many folks inquire how they can support the podcast. You can do so by leaving a 5-star review on the platform you're listening on. That's always a good way to go. Goes a long way, and it's free. Or you can subscribe to our Patreon to have access to early released episodes at patreon.com/Nicholas Natali. Wanted to answer that quick FAQ for you. All right, back to the episode. If you're having this business and like you said, it's a year, maybe a little over a year, at the same income level that you're at, but then you find this coach and then you have a breakthrough, what's that breakthrough look like? Is it shattering limiting beliefs that you were carrying, or was it more so like you touched on earlier, like I needed to learn marketing and sales? Which side did it lean more on, the technical or the mental? What was the big breakthrough that pushed you to double your income?
Great question. And I would say this is where a lot of people, I think, have the wrong idea. So because they're like, man, I just need this one new strategy, this silver bullet, this whatever, and then everything's going to be fine, right?
Right.
And what happens to those people, and I know this because I used to be this person, sometimes I still am, where it's like you're looking for a solution, you're like, okay, let me go and buy this person's course because, you know, they said that they're going to teach me this one super amazing marketing skill and then everything's going to be great. Then you go do that. And then it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to. So you go buy the next thing and you go buy the next thing and you go buy the next thing. I had way more than enough information. It was all about application. And I would say that's where most people are at, especially in today's day and age with the internet. I mean, you can pretty much go online and learn how to do anything, at least at a competent level for free. And that's a blessing and a curse. Yeah. Because the curse is there's always more to learn and you're like, oh, well, this strategy just doesn't work for me, right? Let me go do the next one. Let me go do the next one. But I would say 99% of the time, you need to actually apply what you already know. So it comes down to a lot of breaking through limiting beliefs, like you said, and honestly just doing it. Because we don't stick to anything for very long. Like we try one thing one time. If it doesn't work, we're like, oh, not for me, right? Or we like to come up with excuses or limiting beliefs. I'm different, right? My business is different. Whatever. We were talking about Dan Kennedy, who's a marketing legend, before we started recording here. And that's like one of his favorite phrases is your business is not different, because everybody says that, right? Like, oh, well, yeah, that works for you, but that's not going to work for me because of X, Y, Z. Your business is not different. Right. And so I would say the majority of the time for the people that I coach, for myself, and just for people in general, it's not usually that you need this new amazing strategy. Like, yes, there's definitely strategies that work better than others, but if you had a bad strategy and you just implemented it and took massive action, you will crush the person that has the best strategy in the world that does nothing. So I would keep that in mind.
I think about that too sometimes, especially when I'm running through which thing do I think is going to work. And I hear myself tell that lie of like, this isn't going to work for me. But and then I ask myself the question, like, don't you know somebody that like makes money through cold emails? Don't you know somebody that makes money through paid ads? Don't you know? So it's like, yeah, I do. So obviously this can work. It's just a matter of, like you're saying, application and even being patient with it. Because yeah, most things may not work out immediately, but the continuous action is where some of that like compound growth comes in of your skill set plus the repeated action. I think you're dead on right there. Let's jump to, there's an owner of the personal training business you were working under, and he ended up moving to South Carolina and selling his business to you for $0. And this is like the business acquisition of a lifetime right here. How did this come to be? And in line with your story, was this part of like the breakthrough, or was this part of your strategy? Was this just happenstance? How did this first acquisition kind of come together?
Wow, I haven't thought about this for a long time. So this was this was a while ago. So this was at the time where I was kind of stuck making not a lot of money. I had my own business and I was working as an independent contractor for this guy who had a personal training company at the time. I was basically doing all of the work, to be honest. Like I was getting my own clients, I was doing the marketing, I was selling them, and I was also doing the training and the fulfillment. But I was making, I don't remember what the split was, but it was less than 50%. And so I was like, man, this doesn't make sense because I'm doing literally all of the work and I'm not getting all of the reward. And so I was about to go out fully on my own. I was in talks with another gym to contract with them. I would not have been able to take any of my current clients with me, which I'd worked really hard to build up to the point where I was at, which again, I wasn't killing it. But so it was really a difficult place to be in because I was like, man, what do I do? Like, do I stay here where I'm working really hard and I'm making some money, but like I should be making way more for the work that I'm doing? Or do I just throw all that away because I worked really hard to get to that point and start over brand new, knowing that I definitely have the potential to make way more money, but I'm going to be starting from literally zero. And so I was kind of in that place for a couple of months and just wrestling back and forth with what do I do, praying about it, and really didn't have a good answer. And then out of the blue, this guy literally emailed me and he's like, hey, Ryan, I am my friend opened a gym in South Carolina. I am going out there to be the general manager. So I am looking to sell my business, and here's the proposition I have. So a lot of the people that I was training were on 6 or 12 month paid in fulls. So he's like, here's the deal. Like, you don't have to pay me anything for the business, but I'm going to keep all of the money that these people have already paid, and you need to train them out for the rest of their contract. So
wow. What a deal.
Yeah, so it was definitely an answer to prayer, and amazing because I was able to acquire this business without paying any money. I don't know. I think it was less than $1,000 in recurring revenue. Everybody else was on paid in fulls. So it was basically betting on myself that, hey, over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, as these people come up for renewal, that I'm going to re-sign them all. And so I think about 3 months later, I had one of my clients come up for renewal, and I ended up signing him for a $5,000 paid in full. He literally handed me a check for $5,000. And at that time, it felt like $1 million to me. So that's kind of the backstory on that.
I took the check.
That was my first high ticket sale.
That's awesome. That's such a great story. Right place, right time, and having the work ethic to fulfill on it is pretty dang cool. A theme that I feel like is recurring right now is betting on yourself. This has like come up multiple times. Do you think that's like a necessary attribute or quality to have as an entrepreneur? Because there's like a certain level of risk that we have to be willing to take on. And the only way that happens is by betting on yourself. And, there's scary stuff. You could be taking on debt, you could be taking on clients you don't know if they're going to pay at the very end. They already paid in full. All of these things, even let's say beyond the struggle phase, if we can categorize it as that, and more of like the inflow and things kind of have a more set system. How have you seen betting on yourself continue to propel you forward? And what does it look like now? Has it changed?
Yeah, great question. I mean, without a doubt, I would say if you want to be an entrepreneur or business owner, you are going to have to bet on yourself, at least if you want to be successful, right? There are going to be plenty of times where it's like, man, you feel like you're between a rock and a hard place. But if you pick the route of safety, you're not going to get to where you want it to go. So if certainty and safety are a big deal to you, you should not get into entrepreneurship or owning a business. Yeah. Even when you're crushing it. I have friends that are 7-figure entrepreneurs that they have challenges all the time. And it's where it's like, I mean, whether it's somebody brings a lawsuit against you or there's all kinds of crazy things that can happen and will happen. And so I would say no matter how successful you are, no matter what stage of business you're in, there is always going to be challenges. There are always going to be times where it's like, man, this feels kind of like a big risk or a calculated risk, right? It's not like you're going all in and betting the farm, right? But the reason why the rewards are potentially so great is because the risk is much higher than somebody who just has an hourly job, right? And so what that looks like today is different, I would say, but in some respects it's the same. So, we were talking before we started recording here that I've just kind of narrowed down my niche of who specifically I work with and how I help them again recently, which honestly, again, it's a little bit different, but that is a risk as well. And that's because it's like, man, okay, if I do that and I send out an email saying, hey, here's what I'm about, here's who I help, here's what I do now, I already know that some of the people on my email list are going to get angry or pissed off about it and whatever. Maybe even some of my current clients might be like, all right, well, I want to cancel now. But it's believing that, hey, I know that this is what I'm called to do. And I know that, yes, there may be people like that, but for every person like that, I'm believing that there's going to be somebody new who's going to say, oh, wow, that's awesome. I love what you're doing and I want to be a part of it. And if you're in business, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be risks that you need to take if you want to go to the next level.
Almost all of the entrepreneurs that I've had the opportunity to interview, they talk about how they have gotten into crazy amounts of debt or they took under a big risk. Like I haven't had many entrepreneurs come on here and say they took on less than like 40K of debt and found themselves in a hole that they were like terrified about. And then they like figure it out over time. I mean, I think that's part of the territory. And I think it's, it takes a certain type of personality. In regards to challenges, here's one I want more information on. Tell me what you can give me. May 2017. IRS comes knocking. What happened, Ryan? This is the fun one. I want, or maybe not fun, but fun to hear at least.
It's fun to talk about now. It was not fun to go through, I'll tell you that. So May 2017, so I had been married for about 6 months at this point. And so long story short, my wife, Brittany, is also an entrepreneur. And really when both of us were getting started, we didn't know what we were doing. And we definitely did not properly pay our taxes and really didn't even understand that whole aspect of things and basically got an education the hard way, let's say. So May 2017, the IRS comes. So my wife was out grocery shopping. I was at home and it was like the middle of the day. And she calls me, she's crying like uncontrollably. And I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? Like, are you okay? And she tells me like, well, I was at the grocery store, like in between cries, right? She's like, I was at the grocery store, I was checking out and our card declined. And I went and looked at our banking app and it said minus $100 or something. And it said tax levy. And she's like, they literally took all of our money. Long story short, they took all of our money. Man. And it was like the end of the month. So I think our rent was due in like 2 days or something and all of these other bills. And so long story short, it was a great opportunity to practice a lot of things that I had been learning up to that point. Because one of the things that I think is really powerful is whatever you focus on is what you feel. If I were to focus on in a situation like that, oh my gosh, my life's over. Like, how am I going to pay for all this stuff? That's horrible, whatever. And don't get me wrong. When Brittany told me that on the phone, it felt like a gut punch. And I was like, man, I don't know what to do. But I knew that I couldn't start crying myself. I needed to step up and be the man God has called me to be and be strong and courageous for Brittany. And so when she got home, this is why I think questions are so powerful. And as a coach, it's one of the reasons why I love coaching, because asking a powerful question can change everything. So I literally asked her, I was like, how can we make this process fun? And she started laughing because of it. But I was serious, because whenever you ask a question, your brain has to come up with an answer for it. So if you ask a bad question like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Or I'm like, why am I so stupid? Or why do I keep failing? Like, not a good question, right? You're going to get a bad answer. If you ask a good question, like another great question, something I learned from Tony Robbins, that you can apply this to basically anything in your life or business. Something bad happens, a result that you didn't want happens. Ask yourself this question: how is this a gift, right? Because if you ask that, not everything is good, right? But there is a gift in everything. And if you ask yourself that question, you're going to find it. Now, you may be right away like, oh, well, there's no gift in this, right? Yeah. But if you ask the question again, your brain is going to keep trying to come up with ways to answer that. Long story short, it was a very difficult season. It was a long season. We ended up working with some tax pros who actually got us our money back within a couple of days, who were able to pay our rent and do some things. And again, the power of coaching, because I had no idea how to deal with any of that. I had no idea what to do or whatever. And the IRS is definitely not going to tell you, oh yeah, hey, if you call and ask these questions, we're going to give you your money back for right now. Man, it was a very tough probably about a year long at least. And it didn't get fully resolved for a couple of years. Things with the IRS take a long time. But one of the coolest things that came from that, I would say, is that it massively built our marriage, because when something like that happens, it's either going to tear your marriage apart or it's going to make it way stronger. And for us, it made us way stronger. Also, massively grew our faith. So one of the things that we committed to before we got married was that no matter what, we're going to tithe 10% of our money to the church every month.
Man.
Non-negotiable, right? All right, 6 months in, the IRS comes and takes all of your money. You're about to go through a massive test, right? You said that. Now let's see if you actually mean that. There was about probably the next 6 months where every single month it was like, all right, do we pay our tithe or do we pay our rent? Right? And but we tithed every single month, and every single month God came through in a lot of ways that were just like, man, I never would have thought of this in a million years. And money coming out of crazy places and people just giving us money and all kinds of crazy stories that I could share with you. But ultimately, it was amazing because it so massively built our faith that, hey, we said we were going to do this. We stayed true to that, even when it was really, really difficult. I mean, if you're crushing it and making tons of money and you have no debt and whatever, it's not very hard then, right? But when you're like, man, do I pay my rent or do I tithe? That's when you're really going to get tested and see, are you actually faithful in that, or are you just saying you are? Crazy story, crazy season of life to go through, but we owe the IRS $0 today.
Nice.
And have learned our lesson that you pay the IRS.
Nice. Yeah, that is a bonkers story. I love all the different facets that come with it and all the benefits that you saw through on the other side, despite it being, such an adversity, truly. And I love that question. How is this a gift? And I'm happy you touched on how it was and how it strengthened your marriage, and even you guys proving to yourselves, you are who you say you are. And this is something I've heard you say is you will stay consistent with who you believe you are. So with that in mind, my follow-up question off of all of that is, how can we go about leveling up who we believe ourselves to be? How can we level that up?
Great question. So I think there's several ways. I think for me, I'm a Christian. And if you're a Christian, I would say the number one way that you can do that is by reading the Bible, right? Because it's God's word. It's going to tell you who God says you are, because it doesn't matter who other people say you are. It doesn't even matter who you say you are. What ultimately matters is who God says you are. And so I think for me, it's getting in the word every single day, because it is so easy to forget. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself with other people, or I should be doing this, or, I should be further along than I think I am, or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's the number one thing, but I'll give a couple other ways as well. So some things that I teach with my clients and some things that I do myself. So I put together a list of 6 questions that I ask myself every day. It's called the power questions. So I've done all kinds of different morning routines and journals and questions and whatever. So about 5 years ago, finally, I was like, okay, I want something that I can do really quickly, but that's going to be really powerful. And so I kind of went through everything and picked out the best of the best and kind of added my own touch to it and came up with these 6 questions. And so these 6 questions are designed to rewire your brain in the way that you're thinking, because naturally we're negative. Right. And this is a great analogy. If you imagine you're planting a garden, you go till up the land, you don't need to plant weeds, right? They're going to come automatically. You just go till the land and do nothing. It's going to be full of weeds in no time. Yeah. Right. But if you actually want something, you want some fruit to grow, you have to plant it. You have to water it. You have to be diligent with it. And so to me, that's what the power questions do. Like asking and answering those questions every day, they start to rewire my brain to where my default is thinking about what I'm grateful for and all the things that I have accomplished and what I want to go do versus all the negative things, right? What did I not do? What did I not get done? What's missing? What's wrong? Because that's naturally where most people's brains go to. So that's one thing. Another thing is literally right behind my computer here, I have a vision board. So everything that I want. And so, man, I literally see it every single day, many, many times throughout the day. So our brain has something called the reticular activating system, RAS for short. And so if you've ever bought a new car or, anything like that, and then suddenly you start seeing it around everywhere, It's because of your reticular activating system, right? So there's millions of things that we could be focused on every day, but if we did that, we would never get anything done, right? So your RAS, it helps you only focus on the things that you tell your brain are important. If you have a car like that, your brain's suddenly going to start picking up on that. And so that's why if you look at your vision board every day, or you ask and answer power questions every single day, then your brain is going to suddenly start to go, okay, this is important to Ryan. Like I need to try to find answers to this question, or I need to try to figure out a way for Ryan to get to the things on his vision board that he says are important. And then the last thing I'll mention, writing out a declaration letter. So this is kind of like a vision board, but it's you writing it out, and you're writing it out, I would think just like the Declaration of Independence, right? America was not independent when they wrote it, right? But they said, hey, we're declaring this is what we want. This is who we are. This is where we're going. And so do that for your life. Declare who you want to be in every single area of your life and what you want. Write it out. And for me, I record an audio version of it, and then I listen to that every single day. So doing those things, it starts to tell your brain what's important, what you want, and your brain is going to start working for you instead of against you.
Powerful stuff. While you were talking, I was just visualizing all the things that I would want to put in my own vision board and all the areas that I would want to improve in. Something that I started doing this year changed how I did things was I was previously asking myself the question, what do I want? And I thought that was good to find clarity. But what I really found to be even better than that is who do I want to be? So when I started writing down characteristics of like the actual person I wanted to be rather than just things that I wanted, it changed my desires, because like the person that I wanted to be already had those other desires innately in them. And then if I just strove to be that person, those other wants would just come along with it. In line with what you're saying, I do think there's so much power in finding clarity in that and then constantly pounding it into our skulls or thick noggins that, hey, you can become this person or you can have these things, but you also have to be maybe intensely is not the best word, but intensely focused in order to make sure that it happens.
That's so good. Just to add on to that real quick, what do I want is a good question, but it's the first question, right? And the next question is, who do I need to become in order to get that? Like you focus on that, on who you need to become, and then the outcome is going to happen, right? So if you say, I want a 7-figure business, well, who do I need to become in order to get a 7-figure business? Answer that question, then go do that.
Yeah. I love it. Let's take it a step deeper. So I know you have steps to becoming extraordinary, and I know 4 of the C's, and you can fill me in on where I need more of the framework. You tell me. I know there's clarity, there's commitment, there's coaching, and then there's course correction. Walk me through the steps to becoming extraordinary.
If you want to break through in any area of your life, in your business, any area of your personal life, these are the 5 steps you should follow. They're pretty much universal. You can apply them to anything. So the 5 steps, you got 4 of them right. So clarity, commitment, coaching. You're missing number 4, which is courageous action. And then number 5 is course correction. And yeah, we've kind of touched on these a little bit, but clarity, I would just say, I mean, you have to know where you are right now. You have to know where you want to get to and what the gap is, right? Because if you have a GPS and you know you want to go somewhere, like, hey, I know I want to make 7 figures in my business, whatever, but you don't know where you're starting, well, the GPS needs 2 points, right? Because if you don't know where you're at right now, then you don't know what you need to do to get to where you want to go. So that's super important, something I think that's very overlooked. And then I think it's really important to get clear on your vision and your goals. And a lot of people, myself included for a long time, I didn't really understand what's the difference between vision and goals. Aren't they the same thing? Whatever. This is how I define it. To me, vision is at least 3+ years out into the future. Should be something that's big, it's bold, it's exciting. It gets you to jump out of bed in the morning because you're like, man, that is what I want. Right? You need something like that, but you also need goals. You need it broken down more, because if all you have is the vision, you're going to be really excited for a while, but you're not going to go anywhere because you don't have any practical steps. So it's not going to last very long. On the other hand, goals to me is 12 months or less. It's much more strategic, much more realistic. You know, you break down your 12-month goals, then you can easily break that down into monthly, into weekly, into even daily action steps, right? So that you're taking practical steps every single day towards achieving that. That's important too, right? Because then you're actually making real progress. But if you have goals with no vision, the vision is what gets you excited. It's what keeps you going. So if you're so focused on the goals and you don't have the vision, you're not going to have the excitement. And if the progress is not going as fast as you want, which if you're just starting out in business or trying to launch something new, I almost guarantee that's going to be the case. It's going to be probably harder than you think, take longer than you think. There's going to be more challenges than you think. So having both of those, I think, is super, super important. And last thing I'll say with that is that when you're setting your goals, I would make sure that you follow the acronym SMART, which is specific, measurable, aligned with your values, which another thing to get clear on, what are your top 5 values, realistic, and time-based. So make sure that all of your goals fit into that. Because if you just set a vague goal of like, hey, I want to make more money, or I want to make a bunch of money, or I want to lose some weight, right? That is not clear at all. I don't remember who said this. This is not my quote, but I love this. Fuzzy goals don't get hit. You don't want fuzzy goals. You want to make them as clear as possible, because the more clear they are, the more certainty you're going to have. The more certainty you have, the more action you're going to take. Conversely, the less clarity you have, the less certainty you're going to have, and the less action you're going to take. Something that I think a lot of people overlook, but super, super important, is clarity. Number 2, commitment. So I look at kind of 3 main things with commitment. It's leverage, accountability, and focus. So leverage, to me, I learned from Tony Robbins a long time ago that there's only 2 reasons anybody does anything. It's either number 1, to avoid pain, number 2, to gain pleasure. And when I jump on a breakthrough call with somebody brand new, I take them through a powerful experience, showing them, hey, what is it going to look like if you don't hit these goals? What is the pain associated to that? But also, hey, if you crush this, how's your life going to be different? How's it going to impact you, your family, every area of your life? That's very, very powerful to get you committed, because it's great to have clarity, but if you don't have the commitment, you're not going to follow through. And there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of shoulds, right? Like, I should work out more. I should do this in my business. I should take my wife on more dates. But shoulds only happen when it's convenient. And you will never get to the life you want by doing things out of convenience. So you got to take your shoulds and turn them into musts. And getting leverage on yourself is one of the things that you can do to do that. Like, it's great to have any type of accountability, but if you're just trying to be accountable to yourself or to your spouse or to your best friend, that's only going to get you so far and not very far. So the best type of accountability to me is always professional accountability. Coaching has been huge for me in terms of that over the last 10 plus years or so. To me, I look at accountability as it's the bridge between information and application. Because again, we were talking about it before, everybody has a lot of information. There's a very low level of application, right? So to me, the bridge is accountability. Lastly, focus. So we're just kind of talking about this, what you focus on every single day is either going to make you more committed or less committed. Some of the things that I mentioned before, the vision board, the declaration letter, the power questions, for me personally, spending time reading the Bible every single day. So those are some of the things that I do so that my focus is on point. Leverage, accountability, focus, all 3 of those things work together to make you more committed, to follow through, to take your shoulds and turn them into musts. Then coaching, step number 3, I look at active versus passive. So passive coaching to me is like, technically, if you're reading a book, you're getting coaching from that book, right? But it's passive. You can't ask the book a question and it's not going to give you an answer back. Like listening to a podcast like this, it's great. You're going to get some coaching from this. Hopefully, if you listen to this, you're going to get some value. But it's a recording, right? You can't ask me a question unless you're Nicholas right now live, right?
Right.
So all of that stuff is great, and I think it's needed, but active coaching is what you think of when you think of one-on-one coaching, or it could be group coaching, or it could be being part of a high-level mastermind, but it's something where you can get direct feedback from somebody immediately. And that is much, much more powerful. As I said before, that's what was missing for me. I had a lot of passive coaching in my life. I was reading tons of books and courses and doing things, and that got me to a certain level. But in order to go to the next level, I needed a higher level of coaching. And that is something that I see a lot. So the bigger your goal, the bigger your vision is for your life, the higher level of coaching that you need to achieve that. If you tell me, hey, I'm going to go start $1 million business tomorrow, and your coaching plan is that I'm going to go read a book a week, not going to happen. Like, you'll probably learn a lot, but it's not going to happen. Like, you need a higher level of coaching. And there's a great quote from Tom Landry, legendary coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And I think it is a perfect definition of what coaching is. He says, a coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you've always known you could be. To me, that's coaching in a nutshell. And then number 4, courageous action. So this is kind of where the rubber meets the road, right? Because like we were talking about before, people, they have the knowledge, but it's just they don't have the follow through and they're not taking the courageous action, right? And the reason I named it courageous action, other than the fact that it starts with C, is that we all have things in our business or in our life where we know that in order to go to the next level or to break through, we need to do this thing, but it's going to require courage on our part. So a lot of times we end up just putting it off. We're like, I'll do that later. I'll do it next month. Or, I need to do this first or whatever. And this is how we end up spending 6 months trying to build a website, working on our logo and doing all of these other things instead of doing the thing that's actually going to make you money, right? Like maybe it's that you need to call somebody or you need to reach out. You got to put yourself out there. And that's scary. It's going to require some courageous action, right? But you're not going to move forward until you do it. By the way, courage doesn't mean that you're not scared. It means that you're scared and you do it anyway. And so what I have found is that if you're in the position where you're like, okay, I kind of know what I need to do, but it's scary and I keep procrastinating, I keep putting it off. What I found is that a lot of times it's because you're missing something from steps 1 through 3. Either you're not clear enough, you're not committed enough, or you don't have a high enough level of coaching. If that's you, I would really take a look at your life and analyze those first 3 steps and see, are you clear enough? Are you committed enough? Do you have a high enough level of coaching? Because the majority of the time, I would say, that's what's missing. Even if you have all those things in line, that doesn't mean it's going to be super easy, right? You still have to take the step, you still have to jump, you still have to do it, but it's going to make it a whole lot easier. And then the last step, course correction. So this can actually be the hardest of all. And the reason for that is because of expectations, right? It's like, okay, Ryan, I did the first 4 steps. I'm clear, I'm committed, I have the coaching, I'm taking the courageous action, but I'm still not getting the result, right? And guess what? That is going to happen, especially if you're just starting out. So you need to have the proper expectation and realize that the first time you try anything, it's not going to work out the way you want. Plain and simple. I mean, if you just think about, how did it go the first time you jumped on a bike and tried to ride it, right? You probably crashed, right? Or the first time you tried to tie your shoe, or an example I love to use is a baby learning how to walk, right? Because what happens? They don't just stand up and first try, boom, they're walking around, they're running all over the place, right?
It was scary.
No, they stand up, they fall down. They stand up, they fall down over and over and over again, right? But every single time that they try, they're learning and they're getting better. And so if we just had that attitude, because imagine a parent being like, oh man, I made my baby just stop trying to walk because they're terrible at it. Like they tried like 20 times yesterday. They fell down every single time. So they're just not going to be a walker. No, of course not, right? You're going to have them keep trying until they learn how to walk. So if you apply that to your life and business, that you just need to keep trying and keep course correcting until you succeed, then it won't be a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. That is my 5-step business breakthrough framework.
I love it. Oh, so much good stuff in there. So insightful, so much value. I totally resonate with you've been working on your logo for 7 months. You've been working on your website for 7 months. I feel like I can think of so many people who have come to me with that same issue. Like, dude, my website is just, it really needs my attention right now. It's like, does it? That's the most important thing? Your logo? Really? That's so funny. It's painfully accurate. That's why it's funny. It hits home. Ryan, we are rapidly approaching the final question of the podcast. Before we do, I want to acknowledge you for all that you're doing. Thank you for coming on here and sharing all of your insights and your wisdom and your value and your story. Something that I love about your story is that you have struggled, like you've gone through the struggles that so many entrepreneurs are going through or have been through. And it's like, at least in my eyes, makes me feel like I'm not alone in this, like this business entrepreneurship process. There's other people that have gone through the valley and came out on the other side. And then you're taking that pain and turning it into purpose and giving back to others and saying, hey, these are all the things I've learned and I want to see you succeed. So I'm going to invest in you, like as a coach, I'm going to hold you accountable. Because I actually had a conversation with a friend last night and he sent me his business game plan. And I gave a bunch of feedback on it. Like I ripped through every slide and I was just like, you could switch things here, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I sent this to 6 people and you're the first person that gave actual feedback. And I think that's common because people are afraid to be honest. And what you do is you hold up a mirror to people and say, hey, this is the person you said you wanted to be. Let's make sure you get there. And it's going to take hard conversations. It's going to take answering, the valuable but possibly difficult questions. So thank you for all that you're doing, Ryan. Obviously, you've got me fired up. I think you can tell.
Appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad you're fired up.
Awesome. The final question of the podcast is, what does it mean to live a fulfilling life?
That is a great question. I love that question. I think it's being successful and working hard at whatever God has called you to do. And that's different for every single person. You can't really compare yourself to other people because God has called you specifically to do something, right? Whether that's be a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad in this season of time or whatever, or start a business or go be a missionary or do whatever. I think it is working hard and being successful at that, whatever God has called you to do. Because I know a ton of people that are very, very successful in the world's eyes in terms of they're making lots of money. From the outside looking in, it looks like their life is amazing, but they are not very fulfilled for one reason or another, right? Either they're doing something that they know they're not called to do, right? Because they're afraid to step into what they really believe they're called to do. And they're just trying to play it safe, or any other number of reasons. So to me, I mean, we were made to continuously grow as well. So if you're in a place where you're kind of in neutral, which honestly, there is no neutral, you're either growing or you're dying in life in every single area. If you stop growing, that means you're dying. And if you're not growing in a certain area of your life, you're not going to be fulfilled in that area. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. Ryan, where can people connect with you? Where can they reach you on the internet? Best way to get in contact?
Yeah, the best way I would say would be go find my podcast, The Extraordinary Man Podcast. There is links to everything I do, as well as tons of amazing interviews I've done with super successful entrepreneurs. So that's the best place.
Awesome. The link to your podcast will be in the show notes. Go say hello to Ryan. Leave him a 5-star review. All of those good things. Ryan, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Nicholas. Thanks for having me.
Bye. That was the episode. You just listened to it. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube, and share this episode with a friend. If that's not enough call to actions to overwhelm you, I'll try again next week. It'll take 5 seconds to share this episode, and it is a great use of your screen time. The real reason you're still here, though, is you want to know the answer to the riddle of the week. What does garlic do when it gets hot? It takes off its cloves. Ooh, it's getting hot in here, garlic, so take off all your cloves. I can't. Thanks for tuning in. See you next Friday at 6 a.m. Be kind, be strong, be disciplined, get after it. Bye.